Just before I spoke to you, I was on the phone to my British friend in England, and she was telling me that the British Army are basically taking over England. They're on the streets, they're everywhere.
Wow.
And the Daily Mail, of course, feeding us this information. I mean,
Yeah.
they're real scaremongering
Yeah.
media outlet, saying the British Army Information Warfare Unit will be deployed
Yeah.
to tackle anti-vaccine, there's that word again, propaganda ahead of jab rollout. It says leaked documents reveal soldiers are already mandating going to our cyberspace, and they said they will tackle the anti-vaccine propaganda. I don't know what they mean by tackle. It doesn't really say what they're going to do.
I mean, Polly, that's very disturbing, right? So they're saying that the 77th Brigade of the UK military, which was formed to combat quote unquote misinformation in Afghanistan, is now essentially going to be deployed against the civilian population for free expression. I mean, this is deeply disturbing. This is not a democracy if the military is being used against the civilian population to control information. I do think people need to recognize this is horrifying. This is absolutely horrifying. You know, the tradition of free expression comes from, you know, the Anglo-Saxon tradition. And you know, the good news on that pushback is there was a decision last week from the U.S. Supreme Court basically saying the First Amendment is the First Amendment and we're not walking away from it. And that includes, it was really about religion, but it also, you know, the very first clause of the First Amendment is about free expression. So that was sort of a good news. Actually, I want to read that, just the first sentence. He says, this is a concurrence by Justice Gorsuch. They were striking down an executive order from Governor Cuomo of New York, but the first sentence of Justice Gorsuch's concurrence, which is the most important part, he says, government is not free to disregard the First Amendment in times of crisis. That's exactly right. They're not free to disregard free expression. They're not free to disregard peaceful assembly. They're not free to disregard the expression of grievances. They're not free to disregard free exercise of religion. So that was an encouraging sight that we had this week as well.
Yeah, and just going back to the British Army, we're seeing very disturbing footage on YouTube and various other things of buses being stopped, people being dragged off. It's really, England is a little out of control right now. And
why are they being dragged off of buses, Polly?
Because they were actually, these people, from what I gather, were on a bus, on a coach, and they were going to London for a protest. But you're not allowed to be a certain amount of people, and they came on the bus and they dragged them. And it was horrible. It was the way they did it, you know.
Yeah.
These young girls, and handcuffing them, throwing them to ground. There's footage of an old man outside of train station, outside train station, being tasered on the floor. It's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. So the British people are having a really hard time right now over there, and my heart goes out to them, because it seems to me that they are sort of the center country for everything at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
And as my friend Ali said to me, how can the army, they're human beings, how they must have vaccinated children among them. How can they turn on us like that? And the answer is I don't know.
You know what, Polly, you know, typically what happens in situations like this is it works for a while and then it stops working, right? It is very dangerous for a government to deploy its military against its own people. They basically have to have a separate cadre of people to make that work. And when the military is fairly representative of the country, it typically doesn't work indefinitely.
Yeah, I agree.